Shedeur Sanders didn't just give an interview, he lit a fuse. Looking straight into the ESPN camera with that calm, confident smile, he dropped the line that turned the entire NFL upside down. I can't control who benches me, but everybody knows what happens when I actually get to play. That wasn't a rookie slip. It wasn't frustration spilling out. It was a calculated strike, a mic drop moment that sent shockwaves from Cleveland to Miami and everywhere in between. Within minutes, the clip was trending. Social media detonated. Players across the league reposted it. ESPN hosts scrambled to rewrite their talking points. And fans in Cleveland finally felt like somebody inside the building said what they'd been screaming all season. This wasn't just Sanders challenging a coach. It was Sanders challenging an entire culture. A system that keeps talent quiet, that buries potential behind excuses. Suddenly exposed live on national television. And here's the thing. That one line did more than call out Kevin Stefanski. It flipped the balance of power in Cleveland. Overnight, Shedeur became more than a rookie quarterback. He became a symbol of change, a lightning rod for fans, a rallying point for teammates, and the face of a movement bigger than football. Because this moment isn't just about who should start under center. It's about who really runs the Browns, a coaching staff clinging to control, or a player bold enough to take it. So buckle up, because what just happened isn't a headline, it's the beginning of a storm. And if this is the noise before Shedeur even takes the field, imagine the chaos when he finally does. Drop your city in the comments and tell me, should Sanders stay in Cleveland or take his talent somewhere else? The second Shedeur Sanders quote hit the airwaves, the sports world spun on its axis. It wasn't just what he said, it was how he said it. Calm, steady, smiling like he already knew the explosion he was about to set off. Everybody knows what happens when I actually get to play. In that moment, Sanders stopped being a benched rookie and started being the story. Twitter turned into a wildfire. Hashtags demanding #StartShedeur lit up timelines. Within hours, clips of the interview had millions of views across TikTok and Instagram. Fans weren't just sharing the video, they were remixing it, slapping the quote onto memes, graphics, even mock jerseys. Local shops in Cleveland were already printing t-shirts with the line before. The game highlights even wrapped up, and it wasn't just the fans. Players around the league joined in. A star wide receiver reposted the clip with fire emojis. A veteran quarterback commented facts under a fan's post. Suddenly, Sanders wasn't just speaking for himself. He was speaking for every player who's ever been told to wait. Their turn, while lesser talent took the field. Even ESPN itself couldn't look away. Panelists rewrote their rundowns mid-show, turning a quiet discussion about week-to-week matchups into a full-blown debate. Is Cleveland sabotaging its own future? One analyst leaned in, saying that wasn't just confidence. That was leadership. He's ready now. The camera cut to another who shook his head, adding, if Stefanski ignores this, he'll lose his locker room by December. This was more than a soundbite. It was a shift in narrative. The Browns' story stopped being about strategy, stats, or rebuilding. It became about one rookie who had the nerve to speak out when everyone else stayed silent. And once that clip went viral, the conversation wasn't in the Browns' hands anymore. It belonged to the fans, the players, and the media circus that fuels the NFL. But while the internet crown shattered the future, inside the Browns building, panic was brewing. Kevin Stefanski has always prided himself on control. Every play scripted, every answer rehearsed, every rookie reminded to trust the system. But when Shedeur Sanders stared into that ESPN camera and calmly dropped his line, the system cracked wide open. Suddenly, Stefanski's authority wasn't just questioned, it was humiliated. Live on national television, the post-game press conference told the story better than any stat sheet. Reporters didn't even bother with the usual softball questions. They went straight for the jugular. Did you hear what Shedeur said? Stefanski froze. His face tightened, his answers robotic. We're evaluating all positions. We like where we are. We're focused on next week. Classic coach speak. But no one was buying it. Not the media, not the fans. And especially not the players sitting in that locker room scrolling through their phones. For weeks, Stefanski has insisted Sanders isn't ready, that he needs more time, that the system comes first. But after that interview, those excuses sound flimsy. How can you say a quarterback isn't ready when he just handled a national spotlight with more composure than half the league's starters? How can you dismiss him as unprepared when his numbers in practice and garbage time snaps outshine the guys ahead of him? The truth is, this isn't about readiness. It's about ego. Stefanski built his identity on being the architect of the Browns' offense, a man who follows the playbook like scripture. Shedeur Sanders represents everything that terrifies him: unpredictability, swagger, and the kind of charisma you can't coach or control. And now, with one viral clip, Stefanski looks like the coach who's afraid of his own player. That's not leadership, that's weakness. The more he digs in, the more obvious it becomes. This isn't strategy, it's pride. And pride is the one thing that can sink a team faster than bad play calling. But the fallout isn't just in press conferences. Inside the locker room, the real shift is already happening. The locker room doesn't run on press releases or coach speak. It runs on respect. And in Cleveland, respect has quietly started shifting from the headset to the rookie holding a clipboard. Players know what matters. They see who commands the huddle, who controls the energy at practice, who can rally teammates even when they're not on the field. And after Shedeur Sanders' ESPN moment, that respect skyrocketed. Younger players especially felt it. To them, this wasn't just confidence, it was leadership. A rookie daring to say out loud what the rest of the locker room whispers behind closed doors. The Browns are wasting their chance. Veterans, too, took notice. Some didn't speak, but their actions spoke for them. One lineman liked the clip within minutes of it dropping. Another retweeted it with a simple fire emoji. A defensive starter quoted the line in his own press scrum, saying, "Facts, facts." That kind of public backing is louder than any coach's excuse. It signals a shift. Players aren't just listening to Stefanski anymore. They're watching Sanders. This doesn't mean chaos overnight. The team isn't breaking into open mutiny. But locker rooms are fragile. Divide them long enough, and unity splinters. Right now, you've got two camps. The old guard clinging to Stefanski's system, and the young blood rallying behind Sanders' spark. And when that spark comes from a rookie who hasn't even been given a fair shot, that's dangerous. Because once a locker room starts to believe in the guy wearing a chain instead of a headset, the coach's words lose their weight. The Browns thought they were benching a quarterback. What they didn't realize is that they may have just benched their leader. And if the players are feeling this shift, you can bet the fans are about to make it even louder. If the locker room whispers were loud, the fan base made sure they turned into a roar. Cleveland fans have endured decades of quarterback heartbreak. They've seen the endless carousel, the false promises, the constant letdowns. So when Shedeur Sanders looked straight into the ESPN camera and dropped his line, it wasn't just a moment, it was an eruption of bottled-up frustration. Within minutes, clips of the interview were everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. You couldn't scroll without seeing Sanders' face in that bold quote. Memes exploded. T-shirts were already being mocked up online. Fans photoshopped him into Cleveland savior posters, while others edited him into highlight reels as if he was already the franchise star. The energy was different. This wasn't the usual complaining after a loss. This was a movement. Fans weren't asking politely anymore. They were demanding. Comment sections turned into digital protests. Start Sanders or fire Stefanski. Sports radio lit up with callers who sounded more like activists than fans. And outside the stadium, banners appeared. Let him play. The shift was undeniable. Cleveland, a city that's had patience beaten into it for generations, finally lost that patience. And this time, it wasn't just about wins or losses. It was about respect. About recognizing a player who clearly had the talent, the poise, and the leadership to change everything, and watching the coaching staff stubbornly deny it. The louder the fans got, the more ownership had to pay attention. Empty seats hurt. Angry callers sting. Viral clips make the franchise look like a joke, and Haslam's front office could see it spiraling. For the first time in a long time, Browns fans weren't united in misery. They were united in rebellion, and their rallying cry was simple: free Shedeur Sanders. And when fans and players find themselves on the same side against the coach, that's when an organization is forced to make a choice. If the fans were the spark, the media was the gasoline. The second Shedeur Sanders ESPN clip hit the airwaves, it wasn't just Cleveland talking anymore. It was everybody. National sports shows ran the segment on repeat. Debate tables turned it into their headline topic. Was Shedeur out of line? Or did he just expose the truth? Became the question of the day. By sunrise, the narrative had exploded beyond football. Late-night hosts cracked jokes about Cleveland fumbling quarterbacks the same way they fumble playoff chances. Major outlets compared Shedeur's boldness to the modern wave of athlete empowerment, lining him up with stars who use their voices to shift entire franchises. Suddenly, he wasn't just a rookie on the Browns. He was a symbol, and that symbol came with consequences. Reporters started asking hard questions that the Browns couldn't dance around anymore. Why isn't Sanders starting? Is Stefanski losing the locker room? How long can management ignore the obvious? Every press conference turned into an ambush, every word dissected. Every hesitation turned into fuel for another segment. Even rival GMs got in on the story. Anonymous quotes popped up in columns. If Cleveland doesn't want him, we'll take him. Analysts started mocking up hypothetical trade packages. Miami, Atlanta, even New England were tossed into the mix. The rumor mill went into overdrive, and the Browns had no way to shut it down. Meanwhile, Shedeur's clip continued to dominate the digital space. Edits of him standing calm and collected, smiling into the camera. Spread with captions like "The future is here" or "QB1 already," his follower count skyrocketed overnight. He wasn't just trending. He was trending in a way that makes front offices panic, because once a story belongs to the people, you can't spin it back. The Browns thought they could control the narrative with coach speak and patience. But the media storm proved something brutal. The narrative wasn't theirs anymore. It belonged to Shedeur, and the more they resisted, the worse they looked. By this point, balance of power in Cleveland wasn't just shifting, it had already flipped. Kevin Stefanski still had the headset, still held the play sheet. But the truth was obvious. He wasn't in control anymore. Every move he made, every decision he explained, was shadowed by the presence of a quarterback he refused to play. And that refusal was now bigger than football. Inside the building, players started taking sides. Veterans, usually quiet about politics, began dropping subtle hints, liking Shedeur's quote on social media, sharing clips, nodding when reporters asked about the situation. Younger players looked at Sanders as a leader before he'd even started a game. The quiet loyalty that once surrounded Stefanski was dissolving, replaced by something more dangerous: doubt, and doubt spreads fast. Once a locker room senses weakness at the top, it doesn't take long before whispers turn into decisions. Conversations in the weight room turned into side glances at practice. Players started questioning why they were fighting for a coach who seemed more interested in protecting his system than locking his team's potential. Meanwhile, GM Andrew Berry was trapped in the middle of a storm he couldn't control. On one side, a head coach doubling down on his ego. On the other, a fan base and roster rallying behind Sanders. And Berry, he was sweating through his suits, playing the nightmare scenario over and over in his head. Shedeur leaves Cleveland, finds success elsewhere, and Berry becomes the GM who handed away a generational talent. That stain doesn't wash out. Ever. The tipping point was clear. This wasn't Stefanski's team anymore. It wasn't Berry's either. It was Shedeur Sanders. He hadn't just seized the spotlight, he'd seized the narrative, the momentum, and the loyalty of the people who mattered most. In the NFL, power doesn't always come from contracts or titles. Sometimes it comes from presence. And Shedeur had it in spades. The Browns could deny it all they wanted. But inside the locker room, in the media, and across the league, one reality was undeniable. The power had shifted. And once it shifts, it never goes back. The Browns had danced around the storm for as long as they could. They tried silence. They tried deflection. They tried acting like Shedeur Sanders was just another rookie waiting his turn. But that one line on ESPN had rewritten the script. And now Cleveland was cornered with nowhere to run. Fans weren't just chanting at games anymore. They were storming talk radio, blasting social media, and flooding team forums with one demand: play Shedeur or lose him. Jerseys with his name were selling faster than any veterans. Highlight clips from practice drew more views online than actual games. This wasn't hype anymore. This was pressure, relentless and unshakable. Kevin Stefanski stood at the podium, gripping his play sheet like a lifeline, answering questions with the same recycled phrases: "We're evaluating. We like our guys. We're focused on next week." But the more he repeated them, the hollower they sounded. Reporters knew it. Players knew it. And the fans? They'd already chosen their quarterback. It wasn't the one Stefanski kept starting. Andrew Berry's nightmare had arrived. Every call from another GM felt like a dagger. Miami, Atlanta, even New England, they all smelled blood in the water. Offers were being whispered, trade packages hinted, all dangling the same carrot: give us Shedeur, and we'll give you the future. And deep down, Berry knew the terrifying truth. If he said yes, his career in Cleveland was finished. If he said no, and Stefanski refused to play Sanders, the franchise would implode anyway. That's checkmate. No matter which way the Browns moved, they were trapped. Play Shedeur, and admit Stefanski was wrong. Trade Shedeur and watch him shine elsewhere. Or keep him benched and let the entire city revolt. Meanwhile, Shedeur didn't flinch. He didn't rant. He didn't beg. He simply waited, confident, calm, knowing the game was already his. Because sometimes power isn't taken with a snap or a throw. Sometimes it's claimed with presence, with truth. With one line that shifts the entire league, Cleveland thought they held the cards. But now the board was flipped. And whether the Browns wanted to face it or not, the future had already chosen its quarterback. His name was Shedeur Sanders.